Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about a not so sexy topic, but an extremely important one, and that is loneliness. Why it happens and how to cure it. And it's not going to be what most people think it is, which is romantic connections. It's going to be a different solution. So the reason I want to approach this topic is because more and more people are coming to me telling me they feel lonely, they feel isolated. And I've been doing some research and it comes up very, very obviously that we live in a loneliness epidemic nowadays. So I found this study, it was done in America, and 30 to 40 years ago, the average American used to have 3 close friends on average. That was the most common answer to the survey. By 2004 and nowadays, the average American has 0 friends on average. That is the most common answer people give. And it doesn't just apply to Americans, it applies to the whole world. And it was just shocking and sad to see. So why are we so lonely and anxious and depressed nowadays? And the answer is quite simple. Us, as humans, as animals, we evolved in tribes. We evolved in communities. You know, back when we were in savannas, we were in a small tribe of less than 100 people, and we were gathering and hunting together, and we took care of each other. And this has been the case for millions and millions of years. You know, our brain is wired to want social connection, to want belonging to a group. So this is absolutely normal. However, what you see in today's society, individualism is encouraged. You know, everyone is like, every man for themselves, take care of yourself, only you can help yourself. And, you know, the most you get is families of, you know, mom and dad and 2 kids. But most people aren't part of a community anymore. They aren't, you know, friends with their neighbors. They aren't helping each other out. They aren't looking out for each other. People are, you know, shutting the doors on their homes and they're just in their little bubble. And this is not how our brain was wired to function. We need connection to survive. We need community. So if you're asking yourself, oh my God, what's wrong with me? Why am I so sad and lonely and depressed and anxious? The answer is there's nothing wrong with you. There's something wrong with society, which, you know, made us so isolated and individualistic and egoistic and self-centered. Now, the problem is that when people become more and more disconnected from others, when they become more lonely and they spend more time alone, they actually begin to fear social interactions. You know, when you close yourself in your room and you stay there all day and you don't interact with anyone or, you know, maybe your parents from time to time or one friend, you begin to be really scared of interacting to people. You become more skeptical. You become more suspicious of people's intentions and just more awkward in social interactions, because this is a muscle that you need to practice. And this is the tragedy, you begin to fear the thing that you actually need the most, which is social connection. Now, the biggest mistake that I see people make all the time, I've made it myself, is when they feel lonely, instead of going to friends and forming social connections and looking for a group to belong to, they go to romantic relationships. You know, society has taught us that this is kind of like the solution for all of our problems. Finding your Prince Charming or your Cinderella will solve loneliness forever. It will solve all problems. So you don't necessarily need to be part of a community or have really close friendships. You just need to find the one, right? Wrong. This is not how it works. And, you know, it makes you really prone to getting in toxic relationships, going back to toxic people and codependent relationships, because if this is your only way of meeting this loneliness need, then basically you'll have the tendency to go for any sort of connection that you can get, even if it's a bad connection. So let's say you have a really toxic ex or really unreliable person you're talking to, or someone that doesn't treat you right, and so on. But even if it's a bad interaction, having that sense of connection with them is better than having no connection at all. So it's really toxic. Then even if you do find, someone that's healthy and a good relationship, it either turns out to be a codependent relationship. You put so much pressure on the other person to fulfill you, to fulfill this loneliness need, that it ends up being unhealthy because of all this pressure you put on the relationship and on the person. And, the relationship just breaks down, falls apart at some point. Or, for instance, what happens a lot of times is you get in a relationship and, at the beginning, there's a lot of chemistry and butterflies. So, you're thinking about them a lot and so on. So the first few months or weeks, it's really nice and you don't feel lonely. But as the relationship settles, and as a healthy relationship should, by the way, and is not as exciting as it was at the beginning, you will start feeling lonely again. You'll start feeling like, okay, I don't have that dopamine anymore, and this person is kind of like so close to me and part of my life that, you will feel the need to go meet other people. You'll feel like it doesn't satisfy you anymore. That's romantic connection. So my point is, and I hope I've made my case well, a romantic connection or romantic relationship, going to dating, even if it's several people, going to dating to meet that loneliness that you feel is not sustainable. It's not the solution. It's not how you cure loneliness. You become really dependent on other people because, especially if you're single, it's extremely unreliable with these dating apps and, how dating has become in our world. You become extremely dependent on people that are unreliable, and basically your mood is 100% affected and dependent on someone else, which is just not healthy. Because if you get that dose of connection, then you're happy from that person, but if you don't, then you're unhappy. And the goal is not to be dependent on one person. That's not healthy by any means. Now, what I tell my clients to do, and what I'm giving you as a homework as well, and I suggest you do, is make a list. Take a piece of paper and divide it into 3 columns. There you'll write, on the first column, you'll write 5 friends that I can contact. 5 people, you can contact, for instance, when you feel lonely. People you might be meeting on a weekly basis or once every month, but having a list of contacts you can go out with, you can discuss your problems with, you can share your pain and your happiness with. The second column will be a list of groups or communities that you can participate in. And this can be anything, even if you're not part of a community right now. A salsa community, an improv class community, a book club. It can be absolutely anything you're into. Kickboxing, painting, photography, anything that you're interested in. Public speaking, for instance, a self-development group, a life coaching group. It can be absolutely anything. But having a list of communities that you can take part in. And this is really important because, as I highlighted before, belonging to a group, belonging to a community, belonging to a tribe is vital. It's essential to make us feel good, to make us feel connected to others, to feel like we are part of something bigger. And then on the third column, write activities that you can do by yourself when you're feeling lonely. So when I say by yourself, I mean just dependent on you alone. So not on another person or a community. Activities that will make you feel more connected. So for instance, to give you an example, what I like to do is when I'm feeling lonely, I like to go to a coffee shop and talk to the barista, ask them how their day was or some random questions. Sit down, read a book. Reading a book, for me, reading also does it. Connecting to a different world, connecting to different characters. I just find it amazing, especially fantasy books. And just, for instance, talking to strangers. If I hear someone talking about an interesting subject, or someone is wearing something cool, or I don't know, I find something interesting about a person, I just start a conversation with them. So, even talking to strangers is an amazing cure for loneliness. It makes you feel more connected to this society we live in. It makes you feel less alone. Something else you can do, and which I recommend, is going into nature. Nature is connection. Everything in nature is connected. The plants, the animals, everything is connected. There's a chain. There's a food chain. There's like the way plants and trees work. If you look at any images of how their roots are connected and just the ecosystem, everything is connection. And when you go into nature, and you look at the tall trees and you look at the sky and you look at the grass and you look at the animals, you realize that you are part of something bigger. It's not just this egocentric view of the world that it's all about me and my mind and my problems. You realize, oh my God, I'm part of something bigger. I'm part of an ecosystem. And you start feeling less important, but in a good way. If we go back to the second column, what I recommend is doing volunteering in nature, for instance. And that way you meet, two needs in the same time. You are in a community with people doing volunteering, doing something meaningful and good, and also being in nature, for instance, planting trees or volunteering at a farm, anything that has to do with nature, animals, and a lot of people around you. Now, what I have to mention is being alone and being lonely isn't the same thing. Having people around you will not necessarily make you feel less lonely. It will just make you feel less alone. For instance, you can go to central London and there are thousands of people around you, but you will still feel lonely because you're not sharing anything meaningful with that person. They don't care about you and you don't care about them. Loneliness is cured when you are in a two-way relationship. It cannot be one way. It has to be two-way. You have to share something meaningful with that person. You have to share your pain, your happiness, and they have to share theirs. So, even in like therapeutic relationships, because it's one-sided, or any kind of relationship that is one-sided, that doesn't cure loneliness. It has to be a two-way street. And remember, you might feel social anxiety at first. You might feel awkward. And that's normal, as I said, because the more you isolate yourself, the more lonely you are, the more this muscle, kind of goes away. So you have to train it again. It's an exercise. It's a skill that you need to develop. So for instance, what I recommend my clients do, even if they don't know about any groups in their city or their town, is just go on Meetup, for instance. I don't know, I know it's in more cities, or some platform like Facebook groups or whatever, and just join whatever group, even if you're not 100% interested in it, just to exercise your social skills. The more you exercise your social skills, the better you will get at socializing, the better you will get at being in a group environment. Because when you are lonely, you actually get quite egocentric, you become kind of greedy because it's all about you and you don't know how to take a step back and be humble. For instance, in a group, let the other person be the center of attention, or do things in a way that other people want to do things. So you don't have 100% control over what is going on. So it might be hard at the beginning, but the more you practice it, the more you put yourself in these situations, the better you will get at it. So that's also a way to develop confidence, but that's a topic for another video. You know, you have your comfort zone, you have your stretch zone, and then you have the zone where you're just like panicking, right? Like your panic zone. We don't want you there, but we don't want you in your comfort zone either, because your comfort zone right now is staying by yourself, for instance, or talking to that one person you know really well. The place where we want to put you is your stretch zone. So, you know, it will vary from person to person. If your stretch zone, for instance, is talking to a waiter, and, you know, talking to strangers is too much, then start with that. You know, maybe you feel more comfortable talking to a waiter. If that's your stretch zone already and it's not in your comfort zone, then do that. If talking to a waiter is in your comfort zone, then talk to a stranger. Does that make sense? So try to basically go out of your comfort zone, in your stretch zone, but not in your panic zone. Don't go in a zone where, for instance, if you have been isolated for weeks, go to a networking party with 100 people. Don't do that, because what will happen is you'll go there and you'll never want to socialize again, and you'll just traumatize yourself, and it's not helpful. So, you know, take a step, just one step at a time. You know, it's like if you have a tap, don't open the tap at full speed completely so the water just like all the water comes out. You know, open it bit by bit. All right, guys, I hope this video was helpful. My suggestion is to make a list of people you can talk to, even if you don't have a lot of friends now. Get to know people through groups, through apps, for instance, like Bumble Friends, through meetups, and have those meaningful, deep interactions with. So not just talking about the weather and surface level things, but actually getting more personal with them. Have a list of communities you can join, and have a list of activities that you can do by yourself, like going to a coffee shop to interact with strangers or whatever it is. Okay, well, this is the end of the video. Lots of love. Give any suggestions you have for future videos, and let me know if it worked in the comments. Bye.